Hello, good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 29th of November 2015 and we're pleased to say that the PC has arrived. Their new PC. If your listeners, the regular listeners will know that we asked for a donation to get some donations in for a new PC because the main PC that we use for everything is now crashing on a regular basis. And we had the funds in thanks to a listener in Glasgow. We won't mention his name, but thanks to the listener in Glasgow, the PC came in on Friday, which is fantastic. So I'm looking forward to cracking open the box and working on that. Fingers crossed.
I thought you were saying cracking open a bottle.
That as well.
Celebration.
That as well. So that's coming in. So we're looking forward to doing that. So a big thanks again to the listener in Glasgow who actually made the donation. Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Right. On the show tonight we have a chap called Stephen Manning from a group called Integrity Ireland. And Stephen has been doing fantastic work with the group, taking on the system basically legally and lawfully, and basically just exposing how corrupt the system is, and the fact that because they're trying to do everything by the law and the law is just ignoring them, basically one rule for us and one rule for them. And Stephen's going to tell us all about what he's been doing with the group and what they've been up to, but they have been doing fantastic work down there. But before we go any further, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Yes, communication channels this evening are...
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 937 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, and speaking of chat rooms, the OYM chat room is available as usual, oymradio.com. You will see the menu links there. It's the second one there. You can log in with your real name or a pseudonym. You can join in there the festivities with all the regular listeners, and there's a lot of happy people in there. A lot of banter goes on. That's a good place to be. And you can also pose questions in there for a guest this evening. We also monitor People's Internet Radio chat room as well on peoplesinternetradio.com. So a big hi to everyone in both of the chat rooms. Excuse me. We also have Facebook, that is the anti-social media. We have the link on the website there for your viewing pleasure, oymradio.com. The Facebook link is there. It's on the left hand side of the screen, also down the bottom as well, as is the link for the YouTube channel, and the link there for the OYM. I keep saying the OYM, it's the TuneIn radio application for your iPhone or your smart device there. You can go into the relevant place where you get those apps, your iPhone or your iStore or Google Play Store, whatever it may be, and you can stick that on Google or stick it into the search bar OYM Radio. You will find us on there. And as I just noticed this evening as well, you will see on the website a lovely festive picture of myself and Alan. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas. Probably a little bit early, but sure, not to worry. You'll see us there in our glory. Alan.
No problem. Cheers, Steve. Right, okay, if you're one of our Facebook friends or you're on our email mailing list, you would have received an email during the week from us regarding Alex Collier. And Alex Collier coming on our show in January. Now, Alex, I know, is doing some webinars on other radio stations at the moment where you have to pay to go in. And obviously, with OYM Radio, we try and avoid doing things like that because we want to get the information out there. However, Alex is going through really bad times at the moment. I'm not going to go into detail, but pretty bad times. And so the first time on OYM Radio, what we want to try and do is we've put up a donations thermometer on the site just to raise funds for Alex. Just a few quid, nothing major, just a couple of quid, because Alex has been on the, let's just say he's been out there speaking all about what's going on. He's direct contact with certain contacts. I won't go into detail. And basically, the information has been phenomenal. He's had 9 death threats. That's how serious the information that he has and what he's putting out there. And sometimes they don't kill you. Sometimes they just destroy your life. And basically, that's what they did with Alex. And that's what they're doing with Alex at the moment. So, for the first time in OAM history, what we're going to try and do is just raise a few quid on the donations thermometer for Alex before he comes on in January. Now, the plan of attack is to run the donations thermometer up to the show that Alex is going to be on. And I spoke to Alex during the week, and he was just, taken aback that a radio station would offer to do this. And I said, well, call it karma if you want. But Alex has done an awful lot to get information out there and put his own life on the line to get the information to us so we know what's going on. And so we said, well, look, we're going to put it up there. We'll see what happens. If we only get a few quid, then fair enough. And, if it's more than that, well, all funds will go to Alex. It's not going to be like Kids in Need or Band-Aid, where apparently a lot of the funding went to administration services and only 5 or 10% went to the actual cause, allegedly. So we've been told, but I don't know how true that is. We just heard it through the pipeline. So all funds that are donated through the donations thermometer will go straight to Alex. So if you can afford a couple of bob, obviously, by all means, if you want to pop it in there and just mark it for the attention for Alex Collier as well, which will help us distinguish who's who. And that's the plan of attack there for the donations thermometer. And we'll let you know exactly how things go over a period of time. We've mentioned this over the next few weeks. Anyway, Steve.
Yeah, some news in relation to Max Egan, or Eugen, whatever way you want to pronounce it. This is beforethenews.com. Max Egan beaten up by Israelis in Australia, it says, shortly after speaking at a Freedom Summit Peace Conference. Max Egan, Australian researcher, was followed afterwards and bashed, beaten and threatened by Israeli Sionim, I think I was pronouncing that incorrectly, telling him to keep his mouth shut. This is happening now, seemingly in Australia, and the Israeli terrorists are walking the streets of Australia with impunity. Please support Max Egan and send him a message of support if you can. Israelis are obviously now getting desperate because the world is seeing them for the monsters they really are, it says on beforethenews.com. And we also suggest that you check out Max's website for more information, and his website is www.thecrowhouse.com. thecrowhouse.com. Again, opinions expressed there are those of beforethenews.com and not of OYM Radio. We have a message here also from Max, and it reads, there is a picture circulating of me laying in a hospital bed with tubes hanging out of me that someone has obviously photoshopped. I have no idea who created it, but would like to clearly state here that it is not a factual picture. In fact, it is highly misleading, and it puts an untrue and entirely false perception in people's minds. I was hurt and suffered 2 cracked ribs, but I was never in that condition. I would never wish to see myself in that condition, and I find it very disturbing that someone has created such a misleading picture. Though I very much appreciate the kind of thoughts and concerns for my well-being everyone has shown for me, if you are someone who has been or is circulating that picture in the belief that it is real, I request that you please respect my wishes and kindly remove it. It is false. Love to all, Max.
Excellent. So basically, if you do see a photo of Max in the bed, it's all Photoshop, so don't believe it. And that's just a message straight from Max regarding that. How's your week, Steve?
Yeah, my week's been fine. Again, quite busy week in work, so haven't really done too much in the line of research or searching up anything. Although I did manage to see a thing on, I think it was a link that was on the all anti-social media Facebook. Again, I don't know where it came from, where it originated from, or how true it is. But there was a couple of British soldiers retired, and they were stood outside some gates. I'm guessing the camera work wasn't great, so I'm guessing it was supposed to be a building of maybe, I don't know, the Buckingham Palace or some such place. But they were there with their hats and their medals, and they had their oaths, their allegiance to Queen and country. And they were kind of renouncing that. I think a couple of them joined up when they were 15. They said that, and one was 19, and they said they had to pledge allegiance to the flag and to the Queen and country and do whatever they were told without question. And basically, what they said was they were too young to know exactly what the ramifications were of this when it happened at the time. And one of the chaps said, I went into Afghanistan and Iraq. Afghanistan and Iraq, he said, and I done exactly what I was told. I killed innocent people. And he says, I'm not proud of it. And he says, but I was following my orders. And he wanted to state clearly that he denounced everything. And they all had their oaths. They threw their oaths on the ground. They took the medals off, as well as the caps, their army hats as well. And they threw them on the ground. Again, there was a big crowd around them, and this was all getting filmed from different angles. And they just walked away. Just that was it. Threw the stuff on the ground, made a short little statement, and left. I
did see that video, yeah.
And was it outside of a building that we know? Was it Buckingham Palace or? some notable building? No?
Probably something like that to make the point. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I've seen that, and I thought, that's great, but it's kind of, the one thing that came into my head was, it's kind of after the horse, shutting the door after the horse is bolted. It's a pity, in retrospect, that they didn't have that idea, that brainwave, before they went into these countries and done whatever atrocities that they did. And it's just a pity that they're retired soldiers, but maybe there might be a little glimmer of hope. Maybe what they've done, that act that they've done recently, may kind of rub off on some of the soldiers who are already serving. And maybe wouldn't it be nice if some of these soldiers were to see this and have a moment of clarity and just do the same thing and just walk away.
I think we always say, if they want a war, send the politicians in.
Exactly.
Let them fight.
Exactly. Look, there was a brilliant video done a long, long time ago by a band many people may remember of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and I think it was Two Tribes. And what they did was, in that, there was everyone was kind of surrounding a ring, and the two politicians were in there. It was supposed to be the American president and a Russian president, and they were in there beating the living daylights out of each other. And again, if countries want war, I think that's the way to solve it. In the ring, get the leaders who want the war, get them in there and see who comes out a winner.
That's it.
What else? Nothing really else. Only I think Joan Borton has seen something there in relation to her as well. She's not too happy. Someone has leaked some information from the Labour camp. It seems, and I think they were kind of looking at Alan Kelly, Mr. Irish Water himself, and again, they're not sure exactly who has leaked this information, but it kind of pertains to a couple of people in the Labour camp that are maybe not going to be in the Labour camp much longer. That's that's as much as I can tell you at the moment. That's all I've seen. Not much else on the radar, to be completely honest with you, with the exception of there was
what's the leak? Pardon the pun.
The leak?
Yeah.
The Irish Water?
Yeah. Well, John Bruton, you said there was a leak. Do you know what the leak was?
Yes.
Alan Kelly.
Well, he is a bit of a drip.
Yes.
But no, there's a couple of people in the Labour camp.
Yeah. And
their names are mentioned on this document that, they weren't going to be with Labour much longer. So it's kind of, it's hinting that there's going to be a bit of a shake-up.
Rats sinking
Rats on the sinking ship.
Rats on the sinking ship, yeah.
Last thing on my agenda is, and we can probably talk about this maybe after if we have time, but it was a great little documentary Alan told me about it during the week, and it was called Impact, and it was just about a catastrophic, cataclysmic event that was going to take place, and it was whereby a brown dwarf was hit the moon, and the moon was on a collision course with Earth, and basically what they done to, how they dealt with it, basically. Won't give too much away. Maybe we can touch on it later if we have time. But it's a nice little documentary. Well, there was a kind of a mini series is actually what it was. I think two-parter, and about 3 hours in total. But definitely worth a watch anyway. Anyway, that's my week in a nutshell. How was your week?
Yeah, not too bad. It was quite good. I just have one thing I just want to mention before we get Stephen on. The Independent.ie have said the Danes, as in the Danish people, were told to convert euros ahead of fall. Scandinavia's biggest bank is advising corporate clients to convert euro cash flows into kroner as soon as possible, as the risk of a sudden appreciation of Denmark currency grows. Now, Denmark is not in the euro, and they had a referendum there, and they voted. It was the Danish People's Party and the Socialist Party that obviously were involved with making sure that they didn't go into the euro. And I think they are just kind of they're trying to get them in there, but the Danish people don't want to go in, and we kind of say the same thing. Don't do it. Don't go in. Stay the way you are. Keep your own currency, because it's just going to be a nightmare if you go in. So, just of interest, the reason why I say that is because the euro price, I don't know whether people have realised, but the dollar price is getting very similar to the euro price. And I was just thinking today, and this is only off the top of my head, I don't even know whether this is possible or plausible, whatever. But they talk about they'd like to have a kind of one world currency and to make life easier when you're doing transactions with other countries.
Yeah.
So the euro is kind of the dollar for Europe, and the dollar is for North America. So, and because it's a default currency at the moment, so if the dollar became the same level as the euro, then wouldn't they could easily turn around and go, you know what, as these two currencies are the same, why don't we bring in one currency and we just get rid of the dollar and the euro, and because they're now the same valuation on the market?
Plausible. Definitely plausible.
Plausible?
Yeah. What was the one that they were looking at a couple of years ago? The Amero?
Amero, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they've even got a name for it now.
Yeah, exactly. So, just something to put out there. You know, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but just, myself thinking about it. Right, okay, we're going to bring our guest in. Now, our guest is a chap called Stephen Manning, and he's part of a group called Integrity Ireland. Now, he does post a lot of videos up on Facebook from the group, and he's at the cutting edge of basically trying to get to use the system legally and lawfully to get things done. And when other people break the law that's in the system or in the legal system, like the police or the guards or the judges or the registrars, for some reason, guess what? There's one rule for us and another rule for them. And ideally, nobody is above the law. So we should be able to take out a private summons or a private prosecution against somebody, especially if they harm you. And you should be able to go to court with that. But for some reason, the system doesn't seem to want to support the people to do it. And I'll have to say, I'll have to take my hat off to Stephen and his group. They are at the cutting edge of what they are doing, and basically getting manhandled and locked up and jailed and threatened, and just everything that could go on, I suppose, they've gone through it. And a fair play to Stephen and his team for doing that. So we'll just bring Stephen in and find out exactly what's been going on. Good evening, Stephen. How are you?
Oh, good evening, Alan and Stephen. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thanks a lot for coming on, Stephen. As I say, well done for what you and your team are doing there with Integrity Ireland, because, you have to have integrity, in life anyway, generally. And when you're dealing with the system, and if the system goes against you, then you should be able to take the appropriate procedures and processes and use the system for your benefit, because the system's not just designed for the people in power, but it's designed for everybody, all of us, and nobody's above the law. Well, that's what we perceive, that nobody's above the law, but basically in your experiences firsthand, that's a different case. But before we go down to your experiences with that, tell us a bit about Integrity Ireland, how it came about, and who's involved in it, and what your main aim is.
Okay. Right. Well, the short and simple version of the story is that I ran into some difficulties in 2009 with a local gentleman, and I had to issue a civil case for defamation against him, very reluctantly, I might add, but after exhausting all other reasonable options, I had to issue a civil claim for defamation. And it revolved around my work as a sports official. I was a soccer referee at the time, and got accused of entering changing rooms uninvited, which didn't happen. And it was a setup, basically, because I had a personal problem with this individual. Now, what I didn't know at the time that I sued this man, I didn't realise that he was connected, and in particular that he was, let's just say, the second cousin of a prominent Mayo politician. And we'll let your listeners work out who they think that might be. Now, I was completely unaware of this fact at the time, but as events unfolded, I tried to process my court claim. I used a solicitor and barrister at the time, but almost immediately I came under anonymous attack. Now, we registered over 720 individual instances. I heard you speaking earlier about your friend there who was receiving death threats and the like. This happened to me as well. We had anonymous adverts going up on the internet. I was being put up on various sexually themed websites in various guises, ranging from a homosexual to a paedophile and all this stuff. It was shocking, awful stuff. And anybody in the right mind, and especially any innocent party in the right mind, would be outraged at what happened. Now, the first alarm bells went off when about 18 months into the so-called investigations, which the local Gardaí had assured me were ongoing. The local chief superintendent wrote to me after I put a bit of pressure on him to find out what was happening. It was taking so long to find out who was doing these things. And he wrote to me and he said that they had arrested, detained and questioned several suspects, and that files had been sent to the DPP. Now, I began to smell a rat for various reasons, which I won't trouble your listeners with right now. But I began to think that there was something amiss. Now, just to put this in context, guys, I should say that at the time that all this was happening, believe it or not, I was considering joining the Garda Reserve. I was still underage to get in. You know, I think the age limit is about 55. That's how much natural respect I had for the authorities, and that was my state of naivete and innocence at the time. But I would then discover that not only had the local chief superintendent lied to me about the investigations ongoing, but that the DPP's office colluded in those lies and wrote back to me and my wife advising us that they had processed these files that had allegedly been sent to them by the guards, and that they had issued instructions. They wouldn't tell us what the instructions were, and I had to go back to the local guards. Now, as luck would have it, when I was speaking to the Garda sergeant in charge of the so-called investigations, while he was on the phone to me, my solicitor was listening in on the landline. I was already in a conversation with her when the Garda sergeant called me. So I have an eyewitness, or an ear witness, if you like, to what was said. I also switched on a recorder when I realised the way the conversation was going. And during this conversation, in an off-guarded moment, this sergeant admitted to me that the files that had been sent to the DPP's office did not contain the names of any suspects. Now, that left open this massive question. Well, hold on a minute. Why would you send empty files to the DPP's office, especially after I had been told in writing that you had actually arrested several different suspects? Now, I could not get an answer to this question. And in the meantime, the British police had been involved in the investigations as well, because there were specific death threats involved in this. And I got the British police involved because I had a suspicion that somebody in England might have been involved in this. Somebody was harassing me on the internet. And they followed up, and they came back to me and said, or back to my solicitor and said, no, we've been to Facebook, we've got the information from Facebook, we can tell you that it's somebody in Ireland that is doing this, and because it's not someone in England, we're going to close our end of the investigation. My solicitor said, great, thank you, can we have that information? And they said, no, we can't give it to you, but we can give it to the local guards. Now, this was back in, I think it was 2011. Now, I must have written 40 letters to the various local, regional and national Garda headquarters. I've written to politicians. I've written to Taoiseach Enda Kenny himself. I've written to the Ministers for Justice. I've told them that the English police are sitting on this information, and all that the guards have to do is pick up a phone and they'll send the information to them, and we'll have the suspects nabbed. But they will not follow through on this. I even went so far as to get court orders issued for the release of that information to us on the say-so of the Devon and Cornwall Constabulary, who told me that if they got a European court order, basically, you know, from our courts, that they would release it then into our hands. And as soon as I did that, there was a firm of solicitors, Arthur Cox Solicitors in Dublin, who are in effect the de facto arm of the government. You know, they do so much work for the government with NAMA and all the rest of it, that's, you know. But anyway, they sent barristers down to try and shut down these court orders that I was trying to get for discovery and disclosure, to find out myself who had been attacking us. And the order sent to England, all of a sudden, after we sent them the funds, the paperwork and everything, all of a sudden, one of their top solicitors in England, who works with the police, who has connections with the Garda Síochána and the Chief State Solicitor's Office over here, they shut down the release of the information, and we're at a complete standstill with that now, and that position has been like that for 3 years. So in the meantime, I took a case against the state, and I alleged that this gentleman, I use the term loosely, and 3 guards were involved in the attacks against us. Now that's the background to the development of Integrity Ireland. Are you still with me, guys?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, so I was, of course, I had no idea why the guards were not only not doing their jobs right, but they seemed to be putting a great deal more effort into covering up these shocking attacks against myself and my family. And I probably should add here, guys, just as a quick synopsis, amongst those 723 incidences, apart from the online attacks and the defamations on Facebook and the allegations, reports were sent to the HSE Child Protection Services anonymously, mind you. And even though there was no signatory at the end of these letters, this triggered off investigations into our family circumstances. There was all the associated embarrassment of that. I got specific death threats. At one point, 2 thugs who were known as heavies for drug gangs were hired from Dundalk and sent out to break my legs. Now, as luck would have it, I think there's some sort of a guardian angel watching over us, but they went to the wrong house, assaulted the wrong man, realised halfway, once they got there, of course, they were in the wrong house and everything. They still went through with their half-baked assault. They were followed because somebody thought they were stealing heating oil from a neighbour's house, and somebody followed them and kept calling the guards, telling them that they were following a couple of robbers. And amazingly, the man following them was told to drop back and let them go. Now, anybody who knows the geography of Achill Island will know that this is a ludicrous thing to say, because once they're off over the bridge and out, and especially once they get past Mulrenny, they can go anywhere. They can go north, south, east or west, and there's no chance of finding them. To tell this person to back off is highly suspicious. It was a holiday weekend. There were no guards at all on duty on Achill that weekend. And the terrible and sad end to this story is that these 2 men, these 2 heavies that were hired to do this job, went back to Dundalk. Of course, by coincidence, the 3 guards that supervised the arrest and then charged them were the exact same 3 guards, a chief superintendent, a superintendent and a sergeant. They were the exact same 3 guards I named in the report, in my case against the state, my High Court case against, well, it's in the High Court now. But in the meantime, these 2 guys went back to Dundalk, and a month later, one of them was shot dead in a very suspicious circumstances. The guards made a grand pretense of investigating that murder, and that happened in 2011. I think it was, hold on a moment. No, 2010. The murder happened in 2010, in March 2010. And the guards even went so far as to put appeals out into the newspapers asking for information. Now, I can tell you now, we've been keeping a lot of this information to ourselves, for the right time, but it's clear that the best thing to do is just expose this sort of stuff. But I can tell you now that the guards in Dundalk and the guards in Achill, at the senior level, were given information that would have led them to solve those crimes. And they still went ahead with the pretense, putting out articles in the paper looking for information. Those crimes remain unsolved.
Okay.
So you can understand, of course, now, I would describe myself as, I'm a family man. I've got 3 children. I have I lived abroad for quite a long time in England, America, Japan as well, and I came back to Ireland in 2005 with a young family, including one special needs boy, because I had these romantic notions of Ireland, and I wanted to, I lived here as a boy myself, and I wanted to bring my family back and experience rural Ireland, growing up. I could not understand it, the concept, and I still struggle to get my head around the idea that we can have, whatever it is, 13,000 members of An Garda Síochána, and I cannot get one of them to deal with us in an open, transparent and honest manner. And I'm not a criminal. I've never done anything. I don't have any criminal record, other than a couple of minor, traffic offences or whatever, and even those. And we can talk about that later on in a moment. But I was just appalled at what had happened to us, and I thought it was something personal. Now, at this time, I still didn't know that the guy that I had sued was connected, so to speak. So I was bewildered at what was going on, and I started looking on the internet, and I came across a few posts. You may remember the Rachel Solicitors website. A man called John Gill set that up. Now, he's since passed away, sadly, but he was a great activist as well. But he had a website called Rachel Solicitor, and people were going in there and venting really about the experiences they were having with solicitors and sometimes guards and other authorities and officials. Now, that website has since been shut down in a court case. Some solicitor went on there and complained about libel and slander or whatever, and the judge accommodated, not just by taking that one post down, but by shutting down the whole website, because it was a massive embarrassment to the legal profession. But it was in that process, though, I found a couple of other people, and I just posted up a message saying, my God, I'm so sorry to hear what's happened to you, on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm so glad to hear that I'm not the only person going through this sort of thing, because I just don't understand what's going on here. We've got a state-funded police force, and they just don't seem to be doing what it says on the tin, and in fact, they seem to be going out of their way to make certain people's lives misery, and there just didn't seem to be any any reason for it. So we had a meeting. There were 7 of us. We met in summer of 2012, spring or summer, up in Dublin, and 7 of us sat down and had a discussion about our various situations, and we all came to the conclusion that yes, something had to be done about this, and it had to be something different to the way things had already been done. And there was one man there, for example, who'd had 17 years of abuse because he got into a planning dispute with a solicitor, and that solicitor is now a High Court judge. And it started off with petty harassment from local guards, and he sort of held his ground and dug in his heels. And now today, as far as I know, that man has something like 33 court cases going on in the High Court, appeals of appeals of appeals of appeals. And frankly, I have all the compassion in the world for him. The man is, you would understand if it drove him insane. But 17, 18 years, his health has suffered. He lost his business, he lost his job, he lost everything. And most of what happened to him appears to be malicious and an abuse of authority and position by people who are abusing their positions. But it was out of that Integrity Ireland grew. And the simple premise behind Integrity Ireland was very simply, we had a handful of meetings and various people had different ideas, but I realised that the first thing we had to do is have an online presence, and I set up the website. And I then realised also, with so many damaged people out there, that's the only word to say it, and I don't say this as a criticism or as a judgment, I just acknowledge the fact that people who have been through this, the sense of loss, of frustration, of disempowerment, of not being able to trust the authorities, it does something to people which is a bit hard to define. Psychologists now and mental health professionals would probably be able to pinpoint it better than I could. But the only way in common language to explain it is that it takes the soul out of people. It takes the energy out of them. It takes the life out of them. And you have these sort of shallow husks of people whose only focus on life is to get some justice. Because as each injustice is heaped upon the previous one, it causes such a deep sense of unfairness and of being deceived and abused and exploited that they simply can't get on with their lives until they see some glimmer of hope that there's some way to address this. So basically, we started to set up the Integrity Ireland website, and it was around that time, in and around summer 2012, that the politicians, Claire Daly, Mick Wallace, Luke Flanagan, and Joan Collins, it started an initiative. Now, the exact history of that initiative lies somewhere in the amount of complaints. Somebody had said, oh, if you go to Claire Daly, she'll listen to you. And people started talking to them. And it came to a point where they thought, right, there's enough people complaining about corruption here, within Garda Síochána in particular at the time, for us to raise some questions, and let's do it properly. So they had a meeting at the Red Cow Hotel. Now, at that first meeting, there were some interesting people present. There were even members from Garda Síochána who had been bullied from within the force. A couple that were there that were courageously stood up and said they wanted to clear their consciences. I was very impressed with that. Marie Farrell, who was involved in the Ian Bailey case, again very courageously stood up and said, yes, 15 years ago I lied about Ian Bailey, and I'm here to try and put the record straight. And, in between, like I say to people, don't judge people. Just look at the courage it takes to stand up and admit you did something wrong. And then look at the treatment that person receives from the state, from the authorities for having done so. And we've seen what happened to the whistleblowers. But anyway, that meeting, I think there was I hope I'm not exaggerating here, but I believe there would have been about 300 people at that meeting. It was a big, solid meeting at the Red Cow Hotel. And at the time, we were still a fledgling little group. The Integrity Ireland philosophy wasn't really solid. I'd started work on the website. And on the premise of that alone, I was asked if we, i.e., Integrity Ireland, would handle the paperwork, and I knew straight away it would be too much. It would be too much work for us, the amount of time. It's very hard to convey to people the amount of time that is taken up trying to administer something like this. If you've had a court case of your own that you've had to handle, and if you're going up against the state and you know the sort of obstructions that they're going to be thrown in your way, the delays, the adjournments, the misinformation, the demands for detailed documentation, all the things that they will do to wear you down. And if you multiply that then by 300-400 times, and you get to understand what a massive undertaking it would be to try and document everyone's cases and be of direct assistance to them. You couldn't do it unless you had a staff of several dozen and the funding to do it. So here we are, starting with just a small handful of us sitting around the table trying to decide how best we could develop this Integrity Ireland project. As it turned out, as they say with all projects, the first thing on the agenda is the split. And it was unfortunate, and again, I'm not here to castigate anyone or judge them. But the fact of the matter is that some of the people involved in that original group of 7, some of them have been so damaged by their experiences that they simply couldn't trust anyone, not even us in the group. And obviously, I'm sure everybody, including the listeners, will understand, you need unity. Unity has to be the core of anything. And at the beginning, it has to be unity around either one central theme or one central philosophy or one central person. It has to work that way. Now, once you start growing a bit, then you form your committees and you do whatever, But at the beginning, it has to be focused on one solid idea, and it has to be tight, and everybody has to sign up to it. So, in between the beginnings of the Red Cow meetings, the TDs there suggested that a committee be set up, and that committee called themselves Justice for All. Now, it's a very common logo to be used, and it's all over the world. There are groups all over the world calling themselves Justice for All. But the idea behind it was that this committee would start to handle all the various complaints coming into them. Now, in the meantime, I had started to develop Integrity Ireland along these very solid lines that anybody who came on board had to sign up to our terms and guidelines. They had to sign a disclaimer that if they did anything out of the ordinary, anything crazy, anything illegal, that they risked, not being supported by us any further.
Yeah.
This was essential, and again, this point has been proven time and time again. We've got a really large database now, and a large database of members. But sometimes I'll have someone come up to me and say, "Hey, Stephen, here's this Fred, let's say Paddy Murphy, right? And his story is shocking, it's appalling, and he's going to be in court next month, and he really needs us to support us." And I say, "Great, get him to fill out the forms." And some people have resented my holding on to this principle so rigidly. But I've learned from experience in the past, and including working with Integrity Ireland, that if a person cannot muster up the personal discipline or the skills, and sometimes it means having internet skills, which a lot of the older generation don't have, and again, we have to say to them, well, sorry, find someone who does, because we have to communicate with you by email and using platforms like Facebook, But some of the people that would come to us, I'm sorry, if you cannot fill out the forms or if you're not prepared to follow that process, for me, it's an indicator, a sort of a red flag, if you like. Not that that person's story is incredible, not that they don't deserve help, but just that we cannot do it. We don't have the resources, If once you sit and listen to somebody's story for 45 minutes or half an hour, and sometimes you're in tears at the end of it. And this has happened to me several times, even on the phone. The other person wouldn't be aware of it. And you're sitting here thinking, this is appalling, this is shocking. And the best thing we can suggest to them is, right, fill out the forms. And the forms we ask people to fill out, guys, are just a one-page application form with a disclaimer, with a sign-off at the bottom. I'll follow the terms and guidelines. Then there's a 2-page form which is called a 7-minute synopsis. And very simply, this is to get people to discipline them into telling their story in a short, concise manner. If they can't do it in those 2 pages, we say break it into 2 different stories and call them story A and story B, or part A and part B. But the reason for this is then because we will then use that 7-minute synopsis to summarize their story in written form, first of all, and secondly, as an interviewer's sheet, a prompt sheet. And
okay.
The idea is that bit by bit we will get more and more people will tell their stories on video, but to do it in 7 minutes or less. Because as we all know, you spot a video on YouTube or whatever, and you see it's a 28-minute video, you're going, oh no, I'll watch something shorter instead, Sorry guys, I've hardly taken a breath there. But the idea behind this, and I should also put out this disclaimer of my own here. I am not for a minute saying that we're doing this perfectly. I'm saying that the idea is good and the system is good. We don't have funding, and it's a struggle for me personally at times to keep up. Even at the moment, there are some people who have been waiting 2 or 3 months for me to get back to them after having sent in application forms. This is compounded by the fact that our mail is being interfered with and things like that, which I suppose we can talk about a bit more later. But the idea behind this is to put people in touch with each other locally so that everybody can share their experiences, so there's some moral support in the first place. Secondly, the last page in the application it's a 1-page chart, a table, and we ask them to list the names of the authority figures who have wronged them and what they've done to them. Just a summary, like deception or, Garda so-and-so, assaulted me, or such and such failed to respond to my correspondence, whatever it might be. And we're taking all that information and putting it on a confidential database, which is accessible by Integrity Ireland members. And it's a bit like our own pulse system, the Garda pulse system where they keep records on all of us. We're starting to keep records now on rogue authority figures. And I must emphasise this again, we're not saying across the board that all of the people, of course, that work for the state are in the Garda Síochána, the legal profession of the courts. Of course, we're not saying that they're corrupt. But what we are absolutely saying is that there is a serious corruption problem within those institutions, and that there's an overlying level of incompetence isn't strong enough, because they're only incompetent when it sort of suits them. They're very competent at covering up the crimes of their own colleagues and superiors, and of making ordinary people's lives hell if we push and try to rock the boat. So this is what we're trying to do at the moment. We're trying to get people to understand we have to come together, and we have to be brave enough to challenge the authorities using the law and using the Constitution as it stands. Well, I'll give you a chance to come in there, lads.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, a lot of information there. And it's great to see that you're doing that. And hopefully Integrity Ireland will carry on expanding, because I've seen some of the videos, as I'm sure Steve has, on Facebook or on YouTube, and you obviously have the patience of a saint, because the frustration alone that the guards are just standing there, especially when you're in the courts in Carlow, and the guards are just standing there just ignoring you. And one of the things I did talk to you about, now on the show we've had experts, I'm sure there might be a few guards tuning in tonight on the show, you never know, but we've had experts on the show like scientist Barry Trower, we've had Ollie Johansson, Professor Ollie Johansson, Dr. Glenn Carlow on the show. I'm trying to remember all the names. We've had a host of guests on, experts in the field of wireless communication technology. They know about that, and they know about the dangers of Tetra. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because all these experts that we've had on the show have all confirmed that microwave technology, anything over 300 megahertz is bad. And the Tetra system, the Tetra radio system, which the Gardaí are using, it's highly dangerous to their health. Now, in the UK, they've had the Tetra system longer, and there's police officers coming down with tumours and cancers and everything else. In 1 week, Barry Trower had 7 UK police officers in his house concerned about this technology. So we know for definite, and from a scientific point of view and fact, that this technology is dangerous. So not only are the Gardaí being used as pawns by the government, they need to kind of wake up, because the Tetra system not only is causing health issues, but apparently it also, the frequency that it works on creates violence. It makes the Gardaí, it makes people more violent. And this is proven science. This is not conspiracy. This is actually, we've had scientists on the show confirming this, because the tests have been done, and hence why the American police force, I don't know what they're using now, because you could argue the point that they seem to be getting worse over in the States, but they used to have Tetra over there as well.
Yes, well, interestingly, as you were talking about that, I did a little research into the Tetra system too. The point, it is very important to make this point. To a certain extent, we are all slaves or servants to the machine. Now, the machine is a term quoted by an author called John Batty Oates, and he wrote a book called Human Truth. Now, I'm giving a little plug there, because I actually published that book for him. Now, John has since passed away, but he talks about the fact that the system as it is, and this is I will come back to this point on Tetra here, but the system as it is rewards those of us who are most expert or most adept at exploiting others.
Yeah.
And it's not just the capitalist system, but the way that many of these structures are set up within state institutions. When the people at the top do not genuinely have the health and well-being and care of the people, if that's not their agenda, no matter what they say, of course, if that isn't their agenda, then obviously all their subordinates are obliged to follow the orders that come down from the top, and the attitudes and basically, if your boss is crooked and you want to pay your mortgage at the end of the week, and he says go and do something crooked, you do it, because otherwise you're out of a job. And I have great sympathy for a great many frontline Gardaí. Now, we've seen incidences recently of guards abusing their position. We saw that terrible incident down in Wexford with your man using the baton. That was extreme violence and completely unnecessary in the circumstances. Yes, he was frustrated and everything, but you just can't go around doing things like that. He could have taken the man's head off, almost the way he hit him. But I'd have sympathy for guards who are being given instructions. They're the ones that are facing us in the courts. I make a point every court that we go into, and every time that there are guards in there, and increasingly there are more and more guards being assigned to our courts. We have been told that they now have a liaison officer between the court service and the Garda Síochána, specifically to deal with so-called troublemakers in the courts. They are doing a specialised training now in Templemore for the same reasons. I think not 2 months ago, we walked into a civil case. And we've got to remember, guys, these are civil cases. You're going into a civil case, and there are armed guards in there with cameras, with it written on their backs, armed response unit. And you're thinking, holy God, what on earth is going on here? What have we done that's causing such alarm in the courts? Well, we've done two things. We've asked questions, and we've made recordings. And I say we, of course, you won't hear me admitting on the open air that we've gone in there and deliberately made recordings. But let me just say that we've been fortunate to have had recordings sent to us by anonymous sources of these incidents in the courts. But isn't it very telling that the courts are so alarmed about the idea that people could video in the courtrooms, that there could be another record of what's going on in that courtroom other than the official record? Especially when we have proven several times now that those official records keep getting altered, amended, changed. It really is. It's a startling state of affairs and an appalling state of affairs. But back to Tetra here now. Yes, the point should be made that a decision was made to use this radio system, this Tetra system, without it being properly tested or checked. And I remember reading something recently that pointed out the difference between technology and the pharmaceutical industry, for example, where drugs companies are obliged to test and test and test and retest their drugs, sometimes for years at a time, on animals and the like, before they are allowed to be sold on the open market. But this Tetra technology has been released and is in active use here in Ireland, and no doubt somebody got a very lucrative contract in this regard, without it being checked or properly tested. And it could be the rank and file guards, who are human beings just like you and I, they're the ones who are being placed at immediate physical risk. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that one of the symptoms of damage being caused by this Tetra system, I think there was a list that I saw, and one of the symptoms was outbursts of anger and aggression.
Yeah, Barry Trevor. We had Barry on the show, and Barry,
depression and all that stuff.
Yeah, we had Barry Trevor on the show, and Barry has confirmed that. Again, we have all these shows are available for people to go over to YouTube and to listen to Dr. Glenn Carlo and Professor Ollie Johansson and the scientist Barry Trower about this technology and the dangers of Tetra. And there's also a website called tetrawatch.net, which I think is a website all about the dangers of Tetra. I had a quick look at that and what's going on with it. And what the guards have to realise over here, I assume the guards want to grow old and see their kids growing up and get their pension at the end of their time working for the Gardaí. And to be honest with you, to be given technology which is dangerous to you, to a person to be using, and they're thinking that the government has their best interest at heart, I think the guards will need to kind of, wake up pretty quickly and realise that the government don't care about them either.
Yes, I agree with that. And this is, I just alluded briefly to the point that when we go into courts, I try to make a specific point, and I keep impressing this on whatever members turn up or supporters turn up at any given court hearing. I keep saying the guards are not the enemy. Please don't get that into your head. Now, naturally, we get upset when any given guard manhandles us, roughs us up, and there are some of them that, you can tell they're bullies, and they should have been sifted out in Templemore, and they should have been refused, commissions in the guards on the basis of these sort of personalities. It's one of the things I'd like to see brought into the selection process would be some sort of psychological evaluation, and anybody who's prone to violence or bullying or anything of that nature or have a history of it, they shouldn't be allowed to become guards. But anyway, that's another story. But we do go up to them beforehand, and I make a point of saying, if I can, I'll see if I can get the ranking or whoever's, this ranking sergeant or inspector or whoever, and I say, look, I want you to know, guys, if there's anything kicks off in here, or if there's anything, I just want you to know, you've just got to walk over to us and ask us to leave, and we'll leave. It's not always that simple, of course, but what I'm saying to them is there's no need for you guys and us guys to get into any sort of an altercation or a confrontation. Our problem is with the guy sitting up on the throne in there on the bench, who is basically making a mockery of the law and is acting often in contempt of their own courts. And this was one of the issues, of course, that caught a lot of attention early on. I think the first one was when we went up against a local county registrar, Fintan Murphy, who, and again, without being too unkind to the man, let me just say he is typical, in my opinion, of the problem we are facing. He is well educated, he is very well enumerated, he is very used to having things all his own way. He is, in fact, to all intents and purposes, he is a mini judge, but he has great power and control over people going in, for example, who are in mortgage arrears, or in particular, because he's also the sheriff. And this is a theme we keep bringing up and keep explaining to people. Look, try and make sense of a scenario where you as a homeowner are being chased by the banks, and often very unfairly chased by the banks, who we bailed out, don't forget,
Yeah.
And you go in there, and then they say, we want your home. We want your home. You haven't paid us back this money. And you sit there in bewilderment, and then the county registrar says, sorry, Mr. Murphy, I've got to side with the banks on this one. Bang, bang, pass this to the sheriff, and he can go and get repossession. Now, what everybody didn't know until recently was he is the sheriff. He steps down off the bench, and he goes into another office, and it's right there in the front of the office, in the court's office of the sheriff, office of the county registrar, office of the returning officer, which the county registrar is as well, and they make a handsome profit on that too.
Exactly. I was going to say about the commission, that they don't forget the when they take the cap off on being the registrar, and then you put the cap on with a sheriff, they get something like 6% commission allegedly. So we've been told.
Yes, it's called. I think it's called a poundage. It's probably back from Old English, but anyway, it's called a poundage. But it is, as well known,
I'd probably call it greed myself.
Well, certainly it raises, and it's so obvious. The question is so obvious it shouldn't have to even be articulated. How can one person sit in judgment over whether or not you lose your home when he is going to benefit financially from making one decision or the other? It's clearly a conflict of interest, and it shouldn't be allowed to continue. But when we first had our first conflicts with Mr. Murphy, now I'd had a couple of previous issues. He was, for example, the man who facilitated Arthur Cox solicitors sending a barrister into his court, and he delayed some of my orders for discovery. I had internet addresses, I had phone numbers, I had all sorts of information which the guards had not acted on, and I was ready to go direct to the various companies to get the information. And what they did, the legislation was brought in 2011, in the middle of me trying to do this, legislation was brought in 2011 that basically, I might get this wrong now, phone records were to be erased after 1 year, I think, and internet records after 2 years. Now, it might be vice versa, I'm not sure. But anyway, the way it sat was that I was trying to get discovery orders, and this Mr. Murphy allowed a barrister and another barrister, a crooked barrister I might add, who had tried to basically, let's call it a spade. He tried to steal 75,000 from the taxpayer, and he was refused. The taxing master wouldn't even give him a penny of it. But he was in a group of 4 or 5 solicitors and barristers, including a previous Attorney General, who tried to take 2 or 3 million out of the taxpayer's purse, which was eventually denied to them on the grounds that I think the taxing master said something along the lines. He said, "Never in all my years of doing this job have I ever seen such an outrageously overblown claim for expenses." And these are the sort of people that are up at the top, you see, and it's corrupting the whole system all the way down.
But this is what
Murphy anyway. That
I was just going to say, Stephen, we've said before on the show time and time again that the hierarchical system does not work, and that's the problem, because you have these people at the top flowing down the information to their minions underneath, the people that work for them, and the people that work for them only know a portion of the information, or they just feel that they have to do it or they lose their job, etc. So that's too much control. So that hierarchical system doesn't work. And I've seen that time and time again in the corporate world, where one person could control 20, 30, 50, 100 people, and because of that person's ignorance, or maybe they're corrupt, or maybe they have their own self-interest at heart, that they can affect the 100 people that come underneath them, and that's why the system doesn't work, and that needs to be changed.
Well, funny enough, it leads us neatly into the opening paragraph, or a couple of the opening paragraphs in the new publication we've done, which is called the Integrity Ireland SOS Guide. Now, I put this together over a period of months, and it's our first step. It's our first step in trying to help people in these difficulties. Now, I should explain something else here, guys, as well. What we did early on in the creation of Integrity Ireland, we decided that we would focus chiefly on 3 institutions: the An Garda Síochána, the legal profession, and the courts. And by the courts, we meant the court service and the judges and the registrars. We had no idea what we were, this rock that we were going to, this stone that we were going to turn. We had no idea what we were going to find underneath it. But the reason we chose these 3 institutions was quite simply because these 3 institutions really are at the top of the tree, so to speak. If you have any sort of a difficulty or a dispute with your neighbour, or with a company, or you have a claim of any sort, you're going to be dealing with the guards, the legal profession, and or the courts at some point. And if those 3 institutions in particular, and the justice system in general, if that can't be relied upon, well, clearly it all flows downhill from there, and it's all flowing in the wrong direction, and we're at the bottom. it's very important. I put this in the opening paragraph that part of the problem, Ireland is a bit unique because there's corruption all over the world. We know that. And, power corrupts absolutely and all that sort of stuff. And you're right, the hierarchical system tends to put too much power in one person's hands. Unless the person in charge is in charge of a small group, or they are some sort of a saint,
Yeah.
Let's say we can't accuse, like, the hierarchy of Jesus, for example, and his apostles and his fellowship, Yeah, that was okay, because he was a good guy, And the same thing with Gandhi or Nelson Mandela, but, and that, of course, is the ideal scenario, that we only put people in charge of big projects or government departments that are decent human beings and have proven that with a track record of being providers and protectors, not predators and parasites. And this is all, like I said, this is all part of this theory now we're working on to try and educate people. And as I was saying about the book there, I note in the book that there are several unique aspects to Irish corruption. And one of them, actually, interestingly, is our tribal past, where it was the done thing, way back in our ancestry, that it was the done thing. You looked after the tribe and you looked after the friends and the relatives and everything. And the point I'm making is that that culture is carried through into Irish politics today and Irish institutions. And as long as it is done, I'd be the same. I'd be interested in giving my brother or my sister or my wife a job if I could, provided they can do it, mind you. But the problem comes when this is done at the cost of somebody else's legitimate claim to be in that position, or at the cost of democracy, or at the cost of truth, or at the cost of to the taxpayer. When it's done at then of course it's wrong. But I articulate in the opening part of the book how Ireland has evolved. The recent 20, 30 years now with people like Charles Hoy, Bertie Ahern, and so on. They turned corruption into a bit of into an art form, almost, into a science. And funny enough, there was an article in the Sunday Times today, which I pulled out there. I thought it might be interesting to quote this. We say here, now let's see, they were talking about the Irish Farmers Association and, the shock of all the farmers that are going through for, donating all their hard-earned funds, But they said here, Bertie Ahern himself, the highest paid head of government in the Organisation for European Cooperation, when he became Taoiseach in 1997, his salary was 112,158. A decade later, it was nearly 3 times as much. His ministers enjoyed 26 separate pay rises in the same period, ending up on 240,000 each before the bust.
Yeah.
And so on. I mean, that's just one small little quote. But when you start adding these different things together, you start to realise, and also the adoption of a lot of the English infrastructure, which was in place, when we sort of, they basically transferred a 700-year tradition over to us. And whilst we can, of course, criticise the British for the awful way they did handle many of their colonies, including Ireland, the fact is that the fact that they were exploiting us, of course they were, but they knew what they were doing, and they're quite efficient at it too. You know what I mean?
Well, all of a sudden, I was just going to say that the way the system works over here is exactly the way a corporate company works. It's no different. The corruption, the arrogance, it's exactly the same. Really, really is. From what I can see, because my background is the corporate world, and it just duplicates what happens in the corporate world about the power, about climbing the ladder, about getting more money, the arrogance kick in, they develop their own little empire, and they protect it, and they use the means they have to them to actually protect that empire, so nothing happens to them. It's exactly like the corporate world, from what I can see anyway. Stephen, we have a few questions that have come in from our listeners, and they want to ask you a few things. So Steve has all the questions there. I'm going to pass you over to Steve.
All right, Alan, thanks.
Right, Stephen. Yeah, some great information. I'm listening here, as I suppose everyone else is, with some of the information that you're given, and it's and some of the stories as well. And I'm sure what you've given us here is not even the tip of the iceberg. But I mean, it's horrifying to think that in this country, in this day and age, that there are people that when they wrong you, and you do the right thing by taking an action against them, that just because they're connected and the whole remainder of your life can be made a living hell. I mean, I think a lot of people, they may not be aware of the significance of that. You know, you hear about whistleblowers, someone has released some information, but you never hear on the likes of the 6 o'clock or the 9 o'clock news, you'll never see someone of your caliber on explaining what exactly goes on behind the scenes and how you hear people are hurting, but you never hear how they're hurting, how their life is a living bloody hell. And I think with the information that you were sharing both with us here tonight and on your videos on YouTube and also on the Integrity Ireland website, which you've posted up in the chat room there, it's worth its weight in gold. It really is. And I just want to say, Joan, one of our regular listeners, she just said, Stephen, just a thank you from me personally. You don't know me, she says, but I respect your courage and time on these issues. And I'd say what Joan is saying there is probably just, it's echo sentiments from, I'd say, people, a lot of people actually. But anyway, do you want to comment on that?
I was going to say, we really do need to hear that, and obviously I thank Joan for that comment. It's really underrated. People misunderstand the importance of encouragement. Yeah. Because there's been many times, literally sitting up through the night doing things that need to be done, fretting over the fact that I haven't been able to get back to people who are waiting to hear from me, and I just physically don't have enough time to do it, trying to decide which project is more important than the other. But if enough people, literally all you have to do is get involved. We're now setting up local groups. When I say setting them up, we have a membership base of a certain number, which I won't disclose, but trust me, it's growing all the time. We have support members, which can be anybody, and then we have active members. Now, these are the people who have to sign a disclaimer, and they have to show that they've actually tried to take action against the authorities. In other words, we want a core group of activists at the centre of this thing. But we are trying to now organise groups locally. Now, we've got 7 that are just in the tentative early stages now of setting up. We're trying to develop a sort of a plan, almost like a franchise, if you like, so that one person will get a list of phone numbers, and they will then take the initiative and call people in their county or in their neighbouring counties or in their region and try and arrange regular meetings. Make sure that nobody goes into court on their own. Nobody is left struggling with legal paperwork and so on and so forth, we're not claiming to be experts at all this, but the most important thing is unity and support. Back to you there, Steve.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, Stephen, have you approached any local, say, TDs, maybe to try and get them on board, or do you think it would be just a complete waste of time?
My local TD would be His Highness Enda Kenny himself,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, I say that now, I know a bit tongue-in-cheek. People would understand if they knew the history of my own case in particular, what our family's been through, and the fact that we have tried. I voted for Enda Kenny last time because I believed that the country desperately needed a change, and I thought at the time that he would follow through with the promises he was making. I was sold on the image and thrilled at the idea that there would be a Mayo Taoiseach, and so on. Unfortunately, now I've written to him. I couldn't even put a figure on it without looking at the computer here, but let's say somewhere in the region of about 30 letters over the last 3 or 4 years, in varying different levels of detail, begging, cajoling. I'll come anywhere you want me to. I need to speak to you, especially because I have implied that he has a personal connection and a personal interest in our personal case, let alone all these issues with Integrity Ireland, the additional issues. But he's given a masterclass in ducking and diving and avoiding meeting me. As a matter of fact, the latest occasion was in Ballyhaunis, County Mayo, where my children are at school. And my children being half Japanese, they dressed up in kimonos. And Mr. Kenny was there on a cultural visit because that particular school has a great many different, I think about 36% of the population are foreigners, because we have one of these direct provision centres here, the Syrians in it and Pakistanis and Eastern Europeans and all the rest of it. And he came in, and my daughter had the courage to bring out my business card, and she handed it to him. She says, "My dad would like to speak to you. He's waiting outside." You know? And apparently he got completely flabbergasted, and you know. Now I spoke to his minders outside. You know, a couple of bodyguards and drivers, whatever, and I told them that I was waiting. I didn't want to cause any sort of a scene or a fuss in the school, out of respect for the school, but I would wait patiently in the car park, and for him to come out. I said I was not. I had 2 questions to ask him, and if he didn't answer me, that was fine. I was going to do it on camera, but that there was no need for them to get excited or worried or anything. You know, that it was all going to be very above board and professional. And literally about 3 minutes before he was due to come out, there was a flurry of activity. The cars got moved and everything, and bang, he jumped in the car quickly. And I put my hand up to stop the car, like a policeman, you know, to stop the car because I wanted to speak to him. He waved at me, and I sort of, you know, I mouthed through. I said, "I am not waving at you." But anyway, he clearly been told that, and he will not meet with me. So I've also approached Michael Ring. I wrote to him. His response was, "I've got nothing to say in this matter. You deal directly with the Taoiseach." I wrote to Charlie Flanagan about 3 years ago. He's now the Minister for Foreign Affairs, correct? And I wrote to him because he'd written an article in the Sunday Times about, criticising the work of the Garda Ombudsman. I wrote directly to him and I said, "Yes, I agree with you. Look what's been happening to us. Could you help us, please?" And he said, he was polite enough, but he said, "Oh, well, you're in the Taoiseach's constituency, so you go to him." But I cannot get the man to meet with us. And no matter what I say, and I've implied that I believe that he is directly implicated in some of the more serious crimes that have been committed against our family, which is a shocking and appalling and defamatory thing to say if it's not true.
Oh, exactly.
But guess what?
Yeah.
But guess what? I'll bet you 10 to 1 that nobody will take us up on this allegation. And again, they'll just play dumb, hope it all goes away, you know. I mean, I have been informed, for example, that a local radio station and one of the big national newspapers have been advised not to cover anything to do with Integrity Ireland, and particularly Stephen Manning, because I was involved in a tentative political project earlier this year. Unfortunately, it collapsed from the inside. But I'm considering having a go now at the upcoming election, and if the only outcome of that is to draw attention to the work of Integrity Ireland, that in itself would be a success, you know.
Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that would be a very good thing to do, because as you say, it would definitely make more people in mainstream aware of Integrity Ireland and what you do. But then again, look, you know as well as I do, Stephen, that even if you were to try it, you know, would it be worth your while? I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of exactly how they're making your life a living hell, but I mean, would it be, you know, would it be just kind of giving them more reason to up their game?
Well, no, again, well said, and that's a very good point, Steve. Now, again, without sounding too much like I'm a saint, which I'm not, and look, I don't have any resources, but the one thing we do have is we have a group now of people who collectively have similar experiences across the board, where they are being failed systematically, repeatedly, and in many cases seriously abused. And, you know, it goes the whole scale, everywhere from just being ignored at one end of the scale to, you know, death threats, and even, you know, dare I say it, even murders occurring that are either not being solved or things are happening in very suspicious circumstances and appear to be getting covered up by authorities, all the way to Minister Fitzgerald, the Minister for Justice. Yeah. But you see, when we started Integrity Ireland, and when I started putting together this sort of a platform, there was a solid plan behind this. There's a defence strategy. There is I'm just checking here my little my guide here, because all of this is in the guide. Yeah, we have a support strategy first of all. The idea is to put people in touch with each other. Then there is a defence strategy, where, for instance, the database of evidence that we're collecting, so that people can share with each other. If for example, you found yourself, excuse me, you found yourself subject to some sort of harassment or intimidation, let's say by Garda Murphy, and you were one of our members, you could check to see if his name appears on the database. And if it does, against his name will be the numbers, the membership numbers of other members who had similar problems with the same guy. You can use those people then as witnesses.
Good idea. Yeah, very good.
When you do tackle or take charge. Yeah, yes, that for example. Also, the threat of publication is a very good defence strategy. The fact that we are brave enough, if you like, to put this stuff up, to put videos up, to record people's stories. I also have a publishing arm called Checkpoint Press. Now, it's not a money-making operation, but I have all facilities to publish people's stories, to publish books, if it comes to that. And that's how we recently published the Integrity Ireland SOS Guide, which by the way stands for Save Our State. But we have a second alternative heading on it, which is State of Shame, dealing with tricksters, thugs, tyrants and thieves in the Irish justice system. And you can work out which is which, by looking at the logos on the front page of the book. But then finally, we also have attack strategies. Now, everybody sort of blanches a wee bit when they hear the, attack, well, that's not very gentlemanly. But listen, we have to realise we are in a battle here. A lot of us are fighting for, I want to say for our lives. I don't mean to stop ourselves being murdered, but we're fighting for the quality of our lives. Yeah. We're fighting to regain some sort of control.
Sometimes I just experience a bit of dropout with Stephen there.
Over the fruitfulness of our lives, instead of wasting all our time dealing with paperwork and false allegations and so on and so forth. Oh yes, I'm still here. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, no. Every now and again, you just drop out, Stephen. So we're just letting the listeners know that it's just the broadband. Oh,
I see. All right. My apologies, guys. I'm not jumping up and down in frustration or anything here, not at the moment, No. But I was just explaining a little bit there that we have support strategies, defence strategies, and attack strategies. And by attack, I cover that by saying, well, look, we're not going out of our way to pick on people who are just doing their best to do their jobs. What we're trying to do is identify the worst perpetrators, the ones who are making a career out of abusing their positions of power and authority. And we've decided that what we have to do is make them personally accountable. And I hope, before we wrap up this evening, guys, I hope you'll give me an opportunity, perhaps 3 or 4 minutes, to speak about one particular tactic we're using called the Common Informer legislation. But the point of this is, the analogy we use is the rabbit running happily along the hillside, and then the eagle spots him. Now, the eagle is doing he's a predator, right? And he's going to come down and gobble up that rabbit, okay? Now, I try to explain to people, it's like we are rabbits, and these predators come over, and it's no use smiling nicely at them. It's no use pointing at another rabbit and say, oh, go and get him instead. It's no use saying, oh, please, not me today. Predators don't care, mainly because predators are what we would call sociopaths or psychopaths, They don't care. What you have to do is arm yourself in such a way as when that eagle comes down to get you, you give him a punch in the beak, or a kick in the you-know-where, or wherever, metaphorically speaking, of course. You give him something to think about so that he flies away thinking, I'm not going to go after that species of rabbit anymore. And that species of rabbit is a rabbit that has an Integrity Ireland badge on, so to speak, right? But it doesn't stop there. You don't give him any peace. You follow him back to his nest, and you climb up the tree that his nest is in, or you set fire to that tree, metaphorically speaking. You go up the nest, you pull the twigs out of it. The point I'm trying to make is this, is that the only message that some of these people will listen to is when they know that they are going to be personally held accountable in some way. And it ranges from publicising what they're doing, speaking openly and saying this is what Garda so-and-so did, or taking a film of it, or publicising it, like that at one end of the scale, all the way up to the other end of the scale where we're lodging criminal complaints against them and trying to take them on in the courts under this Common Informer legislation.
I'd say something.
Desperately at the moment.
I'll say something, Stephen. We do have a list of questions which we're going to try and get through. We're going to quick fire them over to you because we want to try and get them all done. I totally agree with what you're saying and your methods. Exposure is always the thing. If you have information of a guard or a judge or something, and something has happened, then you expose, you let people know, because it's only by letting people know they'll realise how corrupt the system is. And by letting people know, and when we talked on the phone privately, I mean, I've said it on the show before, no secret society throughout history has survived once it's been exposed, and it's all about exposing these people and what they're doing, because some people just won't believe it, they won't even comprehend it, because they think, oh, they're a member of the guards, or they're in court, or they're a solicitor, that, or they have to abide by the law. Well, obviously proof is in the pudding, and you know yourself that's not the case. But listen, Steve has a lot of questions. I'm going to try and get through to them, get them over to you. And if you can kind of quick fire them out, because we have about 25 minutes left, and so we're going to try and get as many as we can over to you. So if you can go through them, that'd be great, Steve.
Yeah, Stephen, the first question that I have here, and I think it's kind of a good one. When you set up Integrity Ireland, and people can join. Have you come across anyone like that has tried to infiltrate the group? You know, someone who was kind of just trying to get in there, who didn't really have a good enough reason to be in there, other than maybe spying for Big Brother.
Yes, and I'll just tell you one quick example, and it's a reason now that we're insisting now when people sign up, I have to see proof of ID as well, you know, and we have a format we go through now, so that it's really quite tight now. It's hard for someone to become a member because they then have access to a confidential website. But on one occasion we were in a meeting, and a smart young man was in there with an older woman, and it was an open public meeting, all were welcome, and just by coincidence I bumped into him on a train a few days later. And he was just in the process of saying hello to a couple of people who were picking him up at the train station. I said, "Oh, hello, so and so. You know, remember me?" And he was clearly a bit awkward and embarrassed. As it turned out, the man, I found out later, the man was a barrister working for the court service. So, he wasn't there out of just personal interest, and the fact as well that he hadn't divulged his private details. And another meeting recently as well, we had two women turn up who pretended to sign in. We ask everybody to just sign a form so that we keep them on the database, keep them informed what's happening. And it was only after they left, about 2/3 of the way through the meeting, that I went to find out, because I was going to call them and check that they were okay and whatever. But they left in the middle of a discussion, which was quite unusual. And it was only afterwards, after checking the list, I realised, no, they hadn't even signed in, you know. So for some reason, they'd chosen to remain anonymous and whatever, you know. So, but other than that, look, we don't really have anything to hide.
Yeah.
The reason for the checks and balances is to try and get a sense of the level of commitment that a person is willing to make. But obviously, having sight of a photo ID is becoming an increasing necessity because of the fact it's not just spies per se. It's not just, you know, undercover guards and this sort of stuff. But there are people who will be involved, and they'll become disillusioned, or they'll fall out with somebody else in the group, and then, you know, in hurt or anger, they can do, you know, damage. So we have to have some sort of structure whereby people sign up, they come in, they're checked out, and hopefully we're going to get better and better at this, so that, you know, we keep moving forward.
Well, that's good to know. What would you say, Stephen, to people who, when they go to the website and they see the form that they must complete in order to become part of Integrity Ireland, what would you say to those people if they were concerned about like the information that they give you, of that falling into the wrong hands? Let's say members of An Garda Síochána or other unsavoury characters.
Well, first of all, I'd say that you know, no data system is 100% secure. We have taken precautions to make sure that our information on our database is as secure as we can make it at the moment. But I couldn't give 100% guarantee to anyone that you know, that their information will not somehow be passed out to other people. But people should remember, look, if you come on board with Integrity Ireland, the main reason we want you to come on board is so that you can help other people. And it is by you helping other people that you will get more help. We've had a handful of people come on board because they're in terrible difficulties themselves. Some are in such difficulties that they can't afford literally to go out to court hearings or to go to meetings and all the rest of it. And then there's the occasional complaint, oh, nobody's doing anything for me. And I have to say back to them, well, look, when you sign up with us, you're signing up to acknowledge and understand that we're giving your information to other people. But it's partly up to you as well to network with those people when you're invited to meetings and stuff and start building relationships with people, But ultimately, I can't guarantee 100% security. But I'd say to people, you shouldn't, if you're coming to Integrity Ireland thinking, oh my God, I don't want anyone else to know sort of who I am and everything, I'd say you're probably not ready yet for membership, because if you're not absolutely fed up with the system, and so fed up with the system that you're ready to stand up and trumpet it from the parapets, so to speak, you probably need to suffer a bit longer before coming to join us,
Yeah.
Because, and I say that with absolute respect. We'll do our best to maintain confidence, but this is about joining a group where we communicate with each other. So your details are going to be shared with a certain amount of people.
Yeah.
And what those people could be. Yeah, the proverbial spy or whatever, so.
Yeah. I would just be kind of, afraid that maybe, you may have someone who, well then again, look, as you said, if people are in dire straits and their back is against the wall, sure, they won't be too concerned about who knows what they're saying. But just on a day-to-day basis, Steve, now I know you're doing a lot of, you are helping a lot of people, and you said sometimes you can't help them as quick as you would like to, because I know you're dealing with your own situation as well. But I mean, just on a day-to-day basis, how has all of this, what's going on, how has it affected your family and your daily life? I mean, do you still continue on as a normal family as best you can, or do you have some uphill struggles?
Yeah. It's an interesting question, Steve. Yeah, it's awful hard, isn't it, to quantify something. Look, I've had a lot of pressure from friends and family advising me to drop the whole issue and walk away. And life is life. You can't beat City Hall and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I again. You look in the mirror. There was one occasion where I said to my wife, in a moment of great frustration and exasperation, and starting to count all the years that have been lost with my children growing up, that there was so much more that we would have been doing were I not involved in this fight. But the only reason I'm involved in this fight is because I became aware of the problem. Now, I would argue that any decent moral person, once they're aware of a problem, if you turn your back on it, that is a moral lapse,
Yeah.
And the one thing I want to be able to say, I may never be rich, I may never be famous, I may never be, successful in other businesses or anything or whatever, but I do want to be able to say with confidence to my children, when I'm an old man, I want to, hopefully I'll get there. That is, I want to be able to say with confidence, look, you can be proud of your dad. He tried his best. Now that's part of it. Now you also asked day-to-day life. Look, again, I'm here to encourage people. Right now, I try not to talk too much about the trauma and the distress and the anxiety and the sense of despair at times that does pass through our lives, because I think anybody who's going through similar situations and is up against the authorities in particular and finding that they're being treated unjustly, I think they can all resonate with that. My position as I see it, and I do tell some close friends sometimes, when I'm having a bad day or I'm struggling to keep up or whatever, but generally speaking, my role at the moment is to empower people, is to encourage them, is to say, look, these people who are wronging you, they're only human, They don't, when they act like this, when they act in these immoral and exploitative ways, when they prey on the weak and the innocent, when they abuse their power and their authority, they do not deserve your respect.
Yeah.
Rise above it and find some way to defend yourself against this, and by joining Integrity Ireland, it's a step in the right direction. Again, we can't promise everything, but yes, life has been difficult, buddy. I mean, we had to move house, for example, 3 times in 3 years. and doing that on a budget, the budget that we're on. Where basically, I'm surviving on benefits too at the moment, even though I'm full time really doing this sort of work. It's unpaid work, of course, and I'm trying to advance a number of cases through the High Court, which where I'm coming, face to face with the DPP's office, the Chief State Solicitor's office, the Ministry for Justice, the court service, and they're all in many different ways doing everything they possibly can to stop my cases being heard, because there's so much detail that will embarrass senior authority figures in them. That's all they've got. The only tactic they've got is to shut us down and silence us. But you alluded earlier, Steve, very briefly, I know you've got other questions, but very briefly, you alluded earlier to, well, isn't it all going to get worse if we start turning up the heat a bit? Well, this has all been planned, you see. We started by telling the authorities, look, if anything happens, like I like to say, if I walk outside here and a London bus lands on my head, well, there's 15 videos that have been already prepared and that are sitting up there with detailed evidence and everything in it, and they will be released. Now that's part, it's a shocking thing to have to say, isn't it? But that is part of our defence strategy. It's the same thing with the group. By coming into the group, we now if you walk into a court tomorrow, it doesn't matter what your issue is. If you walk into a court tomorrow with an Integrity Ireland badge on, that is going to get noticed. And we're hoping that it's slowly starting to filter through to judges in particular, because there's some serious problematic judges out there. Some of them are just way out of control, absolutely. That, if they deliberately wrong us, that there will be consequences, and it is beginning to work. I mean, the very fact that they have a special training unit now in Templemore, the fact that myself and 3 other men from Mayo are on some sort of special watch list, the fact that my mail is being interfered with now, of course, it causes difficulties for us, but it's clear that there is considerable concern amongst rogue authority figures, because the rest of them don't need to worry. As a matter of fact, if everything was going well, we could disband Integrity Ireland tomorrow. All we're asking for is fair treatment. Fair treatment, that's all. Just fair treatment. And to give credit, and I'm going to name him here on your show, I'm going to give credit to one judge that we had dealings with a couple of weeks ago, a man called Keenan Johnson. And I'd like people to hear this, those of us that were present in his court, I had an issue that he had to deal with, but it wasn't that issue. He was fair with me, which is great. But he was just very compassionate and very considerate. There were people up in front of him whom he could have literally thrown the book at. I won't go into the details, but instead he kept looking for ways to try and accommodate them and give them another chance. And that contrasts 100% with some of these, some of the other judges, and some of them at the top of their game at the moment, who have utter disdain and contempt for lay litigants in particular, and who seem to thrive on bullying and intimidating people, and which is one of the things that we're trying to stand up against.
Can I jump in there? I was just wondering very quickly, I was just thinking, maybe like the website Rate Your Solicitor, it'd probably be taken down, but I'm just wondering, has anybody ever thought of putting up a website called GardaWatch.ie, where you report things that the Garda have done, in a not in a kind of malicious kind of way, but just the facts as they know it, as being reported. I mean, chances are it'd probably get taken down very quickly, but it's just something that I don't know whether is that something that you've come across? Any other countries that have something like that, a website where they're kind of monitoring the police and to kind of keep them above the law, so to speak?
Well, we're supposed to rely on our public media, the mainstream media, to do that sort of thing, but it's a good idea. Now, part of our confidential database is called HAFTA, H-A-F-T-A, which stands for Holding Authority Figures to Account. And ironically, or sort of coincidentally, it's also the Hindu or Urdu name for graft, bribes, official bribes out in India and all that, But this HAFTA database, to a certain extent, it's doing that. Now, on that as well, we're way behind. I mean, it's growing all the time, but it's just the administrative time it takes to keep it updated. But you see, there's a danger here guys, and it was the danger that the RateYourSolicitor.com website ran into. All you have to do, just imagine, right? Let's say you start growing a database like that, and then a rogue guard gets on there and makes some sort of an anonymous complaint about Garda Murphy, right? And then they take that to the courts and they go, look at this, he defamed me and this incident never happened, it's not true, bang, it's gone. So we have to have very tight administration on this as well. For example, anybody who writes anything up, they are signing off. It's part of the conditions of giving us information for our HAFTA database, that they are willing to stand up in the court of law and back that up. And that's our cover. And we have to be able to identify them. Now, we don't ask everyone to put their name next to the comments, but we have a registration number for each member, and they either have to put that up there or their full name. And it comes through us anyway, so nothing gets broadcast. And it's also only broadcast on our confidential website, which nobody's allowed into officially.
Mind you,
unless you're assigned it.
The video evidence is a good thing, because then it can't be disputed, which is quite good. Right, Stephen, we have about 10 minutes left. Give or take. So, Steve, you have more questions there for Stephen?
I do, yeah.
Okay, we have a couple of more there, Stephen.
Just want to make this announcement as well. Some of the lads on People's Internet Radio have said, just in relation to your comment, Alan, NetPol is the English version. I'm guessing that's of a website where you can check about your police, and Copwatch in the USA is a second one as well. So maybe we do need an Irish one.
Yeah.
You spoke earlier, Stephen, actually, of videos, and you said if anything was to happen to you, there's, I think you said 15 videos that is ready to go live. Of all the videos that you've put up to date, have the government, because we know like that the government have kind of been in bed with YouTube from time to time on different issues, and have any of your videos to date been removed or edited or messed about in any way at all?
Not that I'm aware of, which is really quite remarkable. It would, on one hand, you'd think it would be a great marker that we are living in an open democracy. Unfortunately, all the evidence suggests is that they realise that we've got a certain, I don't know what the word is now, it's not power exactly, but we've got a presence now.
Yeah.
2 years ago, when we walked into the first court we had just had business cards, Integrity Ireland business cards. We pinned them on a thing with a safety pin. What's that? Some judge said. Oh, this is Citizens for Justice, Transparency and Accountability. I said with a big smile on my face. Obviously, Judge, something you'd be 100% behind. But now, yes, we know we do have inside sources. We have. Ranging from people working in the court service within Garda Síochána, inside the banking inquiry, and places like that. You'd be really surprised. There are certain things I cannot disclose, but there's information coming to us which helps inform me as the administrator of Integrity Ireland about how best to move forwards. Sorry, I've sort of lost track of the original question there. Sorry, Steve.
No, you're okay. You're doing fine, and you're making perfect sense. And just kind of as a little bit of side note, I just want to say Joe Ducey is tuning in. He's listening to you this evening, and he said, "Can you just tell Stephen?" I said, "Hello and good interview." So good evening, Joe. You're more than welcome along. And what else? Chris wants to buy you a point. He says our country is not finished. When she has sons with Stephen's qualities, Ireland is not finished. So more good comments coming in there. And did you hear about this one, Stephen? Actually, I only heard about this evening, and I don't know if maybe it's come up on your radar. It's a little off topic, but I just heard that members of the army are being kind of prepared to assist or take over from the Gardaí in relation to Irish water protesters. Did you hear anything about that?
No, it's the first I've heard of it. But interestingly, it might intrigue the listeners to know that. And it also ties in exactly with Joe Ducey's situation. For those who don't know, Joe is currently in exile, self-imposed exile, due to harassment and an assault committed by guards, which we're trying to get the Garda Commissioner to give the names of the guards involved. She won't do it. She may be facing criminal charges herself because of that, but that's sort of another story. But funny enough, when we couldn't get we wrote to the Chief Justice, to the Minister for Justice, to the Garda Commissioner, to the Taoiseach, and even to the President of Ireland himself, trying to explain to him that all our constitutional rights are being thrashed. And what else could we do? And I actually approached the army then. And I got clarity. I had to find out from them, now, what's the situation? We're going into a court, I said, and we don't feel safe. And we don't feel safe because the judge or the registrar and the guards that are present and the solicitors, they're all involved in various activities which are clearly and openly unconstitutional. We feel that we're in danger. We don't want to get into a physical confrontation. Will you protect us? And it was then that I was informed by I think he was a commandant I was speaking to, but he informed me that actually the army is obliged to support the statutory authorities, which would be the guards. So unless some other little hidden army springs up out of the bushes, with the authority to help us, we're in this awkward situation whereby we're going into the courts, for example. When I'm in the court, I'm advising other people to do this as well. You read out a declaration. You ask the judge first, may I please read out a statutory declaration, a constitutional declaration. It's very simple. You just insist that you don't get manhandled unless you're doing something illegal, this sort of stuff, and that your constitutional rights will be respected. And if anybody lies or perjures themselves, that the court will take the appropriate action and not just ignore it, which is what they're doing most of the time. On that basis, you're trying to educate the court, and I don't mean that in a cheeky sense. I mean, we're trying to educate the court that we are getting wise to what is going on. And we're saying, in as respectful of terms as we can possibly do, please, 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 Judge, just do your job right. Treat me fair and stick to your code of conduct and the Constitution, and it's a beginning point, but their reaction, and it ties into what you were saying earlier about our daily lives, their reaction, one knee-jerk reaction was to report me, for example, to the Child Protection Authorities. There was a claim put in that I had locked my children in the house for 3 days. Now that kicked off a series of events, followed up by another allegation concerning my special needs son, and we ended up having to fight in court, 3 or 4 court cases. And I would have lost the cases and possibly lost jurisdiction of my own children had I not produced a tape recording in court and said to the judge of the day, will you allow me to bring this into evidence? Well, what's that? I said, this is a recording which will prove that woman, the social worker, is lying to you and that the guards are lying to you. And he nearly blew a fuse, but he had to accept it, but he wouldn't let me read it into the evidence. He just threw the case out. But this is the sort of thing we're up against. I had another 5 criminal summonses delivered to the house, a house which was unregistered, and the guards were not supposed to know we were here. One of the moves I had to make, And believe it or not, they start with going into a bus lane. And anybody who's interested in that, I'll be back in court in Dublin in the Chancery Court on January the 12th, dealing with that. And I think it's ludicrous. The whole thing is just preposterous and ludicrous in the circumstances. And the guards have walked themselves into an absolute embarrassment with this one. And the judge who oversaw the last hearing where I was assaulted and got injured, and it's all on the doctor's record and so on, and that's going to be another case taken against the state for personal injury. And this is the way we have to do it, you see. We cannot allow them to continue to think that they can treat us this way, and like the rabbit, just go, oh, please, not me. That's not going to deter them, even if you do happen to get away once or twice, when you have a culture like this, it has to be challenged, and it has to be done so with a certain amount of courage, and it is scary, but you know what, it's liberating at the same time. It's a liberating thing, punching the bully in the nose. It's a really liberating thing, and I'll tell you something else, in my experience, my life experience, 9 times out of 10, that bully is going to run away crying.
Yeah, well, I will say something, Stephen, that congratulations on all the work that you're doing. It is fantastic. And also, as I say, for maybe the guards, or if the guards are listening to this interview sometime, that they're being used as pawns as well, because, yes, as I say, it's not just them being abused by the people at the top, because we know it's not all guards. We always know there's bad apples in the barrel. And the likes of John Wilson and a few of the guards who've come out and been whistleblowers, and they've been attacked and intimidated by their own people because of what they've said. And I don't really understand. I mean, I had a friend of mine on Rainey on a couple of weeks ago, and I only found out later that Rainey had done some training on NLP, She's an NLP practitioner, and I'm pretty convinced, and this is just my own opinion, that they use NLP techniques in Templemore. They must do, because why is it just such a closed shop with the Gardaí that when you try to speak to them over something, they just shut down and they just don't take it in? So there must be something going on down there.
What's NLP, Steve?
NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It's a method of using words and phrases to program your mind into think in a certain way. And I'm sure down in Templemore, they do it in such a way that they program them and they convince the new recruits that what they're going out to after 6 months of training is going to be a war zone, and everybody's out to get you, and you have to make sure that you're like a gang together, like the mafia, and you protect each other, because the people out there are dangerous, and you have to be careful, and they'll try and deceive you all the time. And all this NLP program over 6 months. So by the time after 6 months they come out, they've been brainwashed into thinking that the world is against them, and their only friends and family are the police themselves, and that's their safe gang. So you have to protect each other, because it's like a mafia gang. You have to protect each other, and don't trust anybody else outside this, because they'll try and do you, they'll lie to you, they'll convince you that you're wrong, and all this kind of stuff. And they're brainwashed into this, and that's the only thing I can think of that they're using.
Yes, well, first of all, the Garda code is secret. These are all working for the public. How is it that we can't read what their operational manual, tells them to do? But I do know, for example, that one of the guides in that code is that if they turn up at a traffic accident, for example, and it involves a member of the force on or off duty, that there are certain procedures which, were anybody else to follow through with those procedures, would be considered an attempt to cover up or collusion. There's all this sort of secrecy. Get the other member out of the way. Don't take any statement from him until he's returned to the station. This, that, and the other. It's all designed to protect them.
Well, this is the whole idea, and this is why I think it's wrong. That's where it's fundamentally falls down. And we need to get people on like John Wilson and a few other ex-whistleblowers to come on to tell us. But Stephen, we've reached that time. We're going to have to let you go. But listen, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Fantastic information, and well done with Integrity Ireland and the team and what you're doing. And I totally agree with, you have to fight fire with fire. I kind of agree with that. And you have to go back and you have to do the letters and bring people to court and hold them responsible, because that's the only way that change is going to happen. I will say that, Enda Kenny is not the only politician down in Mayo, so I would personally be going to all the other politicians, especially the ones that want to be elected, and let them know what's going on, because half the battle is maybe they don't know what's going on. So that's my recommendation anyway. But again, a big thank you for coming on. I'm going to pass you over to Steve, and Steve's going to get all your contact information and tell us about your book and all that, so people know where to find you. Steve.
Yeah, Stephen, it's been great information. I think you may want to give us. I know you wanted to give us a summing up at the end. So I mean,
that's right. Yeah.
And we have the website here, integrityireland.ie. I will stick that up again in the chat room. But the last few minutes for a closing statement goes to you, Stephen.
Oh, really? So we're still on air, are we?
Yeah, we're still in there. So
we're still here. No, I want you to give your closing thoughts.
I thought. Yeah, all right, guys. You can hear me all right. Yes, I was just going to first of all, of course, invite people if they are interested or they're in a sticky situation, please buy the Integrity Ireland SOS Guide. Now, if you buy it off the internet, it's priced at about £40 English, €50. Now, it might seem like a lot, but it's a substantial book, 320 pages, and it's A4 size. You could use it as a weapon if you really needed to, but in there is one particular area, which is part 2, which is called the Common Informal Legislation. And in 1 minute, I'll just summarize this by explaining that under normal circumstances, most people believe if a wrong is committed against them, they are obliged to go and report that wrong, that crime, to the guards, and the guards in turn, investigate or don't investigate, or prosecute or don't prosecute. That's what people think. But in fact, there is a procedure called the Common Informal Legislation, and it's explained in the book, and the forms are in there for you to photocopy and use for yourself. It's relatively simple. It costs you nothing, but you can walk straight into a district court, provided you have the evidence of the crime committed against you, and the judge is obliged to issue a summons against the person you're accusing. Now, we're trying to use this to take on rogue authority figures. It's giving them a big fright, there's no doubt about that. They've blocked our first two attempts by using, ironically, by using other disingenuous activities. We're considering now actually going after those individuals for collusion and conspiracy. But it's a relatively simple procedure. It's 2 forms, very easy to fill out. You go in, provided you have the evidence, you can prosecute someone in your own name and keep it out of the hands of the statutory authorities so that they can't cover it up. And at the very least, that will cause some professional embarrassment to these individuals and make them realise that there is somebody going to stand up and hold them to account.
Brilliant stuff.
Thanks very much, guys.
Okay, Stephen, that's great. Thanks a lot. Just stay with us there, Stephen. We'll be going to a musical break and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
And we're back. Yeah, Stephen Manning from Integrity Ireland there. Some great information, and I just have I'm actually on the page here now at the moment. I will post it up in the link, but you'll probably find it on the website anyway, where if you want to order your guide, the SOS guide, as he did say, it is £40 sterling at the moment there. It is available through Amazon.co.uk. I'll put the link in the website there, but it's obviously great. Going to be great information, and probably worth its weight in gold. Probably worth 4 or 5 times its asking price as well.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Okay, just a couple of things, just reminders. Again, we're planning to have Alex Collier on the show in January, and Alex is going through a really hard time at the moment. So for the first time in OYM history, we're hoping to raise funds, just a few quid for Alex, just to go towards his upkeep, because things are pretty bad for Alex at the moment. He had 9 death threats already because of the information that he has. So it's going to be a fantastic interview, great information. But also, sometimes, as I say, they don't kill you. They make your life really, really hard, which is what's going on at the moment. So Alex is just hanging in there. So, if we can raise a few quid for him, that'd be fantastic. The other thing that you've probably seen during the week, Steve, as well, is that Claire Daly and Mick Wallace apparently might be going to prison because they broke into Shannon and they had a £2,000 fine, €2,000 fine, which they're refusing to pay. And Mick is kind of adamant that if they have to go to jail, so be it. See, this is what they do. They lock up people. They'll try and attempt to lock up people like Claire and Mick because they're trying to do the right thing. But when the real criminals do something, they just want to push it to the side. It's just a cesspit of corruption. What can you do? Yeah. It's unbelievable. But Stephen and his team and everybody else who's making the effort are doing something and getting the information out there and going on the attack. I think is a great thing.
It'll be quite interesting to see exactly what happens now with Mick and Claire now coming up to Christmas. I mean, obviously they're determined that they're not going to pay the fine, and that's fine. If you remember a long, long time ago, back in the 80s, there was a TD. He was kind of a local TD for Dublin Inner City, and he used to fight for the rights of the traders, the ladies who used to operate the stalls in Moore Street. I think his name was Tony Gregory. It was actually Tony Gregory. I think he's dead a long time now, but he fought for the rights of those people then, and he was willing to do time, and he did. He actually did time, and fair play to him. And it's sad in a way that Mick and Claire are going to be looking at life, well, not life, but Christmas behind bars anyway, away from friends and family at this particular time of year. Of course, we're not saying anyone should go and pay the fine on their behalf, but I'd be interested to see what happens. Of course, if they do spend time behind bars for the Christmas period, it'll probably get a brief mention on mainstream, and they'll be painted in a completely different picture as to their true colours. They'll be made to be criminals, so to speak, but which is unfair, because they are doing good work, and I think a lot of people kind of on a certain side of the fence don't appreciate the good work that the likes of Claire and Mick are actually doing. I know a lot of people don't like Mick. I know people who think, Mick Wallace, and if kind of some expletives come after his name, they don't like him. But I have to say, I admire the man because he stands up for what he believes, and he's not afraid to be counted.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, at the end of the day, he is getting the information out there in the Dáil, wherever your opinion is. It's great that he's standing up and doing that, and obviously saying it and exposing it, and Claire doing the same thing. And we only have a handful of them people in the Dáil, but they're worth their weight in gold. And if we can get more people in there, even independents, but be careful, because as I think you said, Steve, about Labour and sinking ship, and people planning to leave Labour. So watch all these TDs. They'll all become, inverted commas, independents, but they'll still have the Labour badge. When you take off the top, they'll have a Labour T-shirt underneath.
We've seen that before, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think at the last election there was people, they were going as independents, but when you actually looked, I think Alan got a picture of this, when you seen the poster, they were independent, but when you look down the bottom right-hand corner of the poster, in little small letters, it said Fine Gael.
Exactly, and I think Ben exposed as well. Ben Gilroy exposed it, and that's something that we have to be aware of. So only, the one thing I was going to ask Stephen, I didn't get around to do it, is when he said, well, I voted for Enda Kenny the last time. I mean, maybe he wasn't aware of the party whip system. I don't know, and that's something that maybe we'll have a chat with Stephen again and ask him. And this is the trouble, when people don't understand the party whip system and how it works, and actually think that political parties, the mainstream parties, can actually make a change. They won't. They don't need to make a change, because they like it the way it is. They don't care about you, and they never will care about you, and they never have cared about you. And that's just the way it works. And this is why we need to make a change. It's funny that, when you don't watch TV for a long time, and then you switch on the news, you can tell straight away that the lies and what's being said, and you just have to go, wow, it's so obvious that it's all propaganda. Have you ever tried that?
Look, as you know, I don't watch the news anyway. But yeah, I have found myself on occasion being in someone else's home, and it would come on, like, let's say in-laws, for as an example, and you hear as it's coming across. But we tend to, I'm sure everyone that's listening tonight does the same. You run through your internal filter, and you do your best to sort out the BS from what's actually happening, and you throw in a little cup of discernment there as well, and then you can kind of figure out roughly what's going on. But I've seen it with some of my in-laws, when the news comes on, and shh, the news is on, and the news goes out, and they don't have the same filtration system that we do. Yeah, it's kind of like a reverse BS filter, so they don't have that, so they take it as verbatim, whatever is portrayed from Brian Dobson or whoever it may be reading the news. And you try to say to them, no, but have you ever considered this? And they look at you, don't be ridiculous. If it wasn't true, it wouldn't be on the news, and you go, here we go again.
Exactly, right, but okay. Yeah. Before we finish up, next week we have Simon White Rabbit. Simon has been away from the system for a while, because there's been a few things going on. So now he's probably, obviously feels wanting to be back in the limelight, and talking about what his experience was and why he was off the radar. So Simon White Rabbit was going to be on next week. That's the plan of attack. Anyway, as usual, for myself, Alan James, take it easy. Have a safe week. Any information, send it in. Thanks for your links, by the way. Thanks, Johns, for sending me over the document. We didn't get a chance to read it, but it was got to do with, I think, 84% or 1% of the elite own 84% of the world, something like that. Half of global wealth owned by the 1%. Yeah, okay, well, I think we can appreciate that. Definitely, John. Thanks for the document. Okay, take care and have a good week. Bye-bye.
Okay, from myself, Stephen George, it's been great information. Really enjoyed having Stephen on this evening, and a big hi to Joe Ducey, as I say, who's also tuned in there as well. And to everyone on the chat room, thanks for your comments and questions. And we do it all again in a week's time. If you're listening to the OYM player, we're going to be going offline now. And if you want more great information, or you're in the mood for more, stay tuned. Or maybe even switch over to People's Internet Radio player. Vin is going to be on there at 9 o'clock, so stay tuned for Vin. We do it all again in a week's time. Until then, take care. Bye bye.